What can employers learn about hiring autistic candidates?
To me, I think that the place I would start for employers is to break down where is, and I'll interchangeably use neurodiverse and autistic because they're similar with how you have interview structures. But when an employer is saying, I want autistic or neurodiverse talent, which is maybe a broader spectrum, like including ADD, for example, or dyslexia, the differences to me are, how do you source that talent? How do you find it out there? How do you interview that talent? Because that group of people thinks and processes information differently and has unique challenges. How do you onboard that talent? Once you say, okay, well, I've extended an offer to them, they've accepted that offer. What do I need to do over kind of their, first 90 days to 6 months to make sure that they are comfortable and successful? And then how do you retain them after that? Because in my opinion, at least, while people who are autistic or neurodiverse are similar in a lot of those ways to neurotypical people, they're still very different. So like a simplistic example, interviews are incredibly challenging for me personally and many people with autism. Yeah. You are meeting a person for the first time. You are getting to know how they communicate, which is a crux of it. It might sound simple to neurotypical people, but the way an autistic person understands language and concepts is very different than a neurotypical person. So a simple example just to highlight that is, if you were to teach an autistic child what a street is, and you were to walk them out of your house and you were to walk them to the street right in front of you, said, this is a street. They would then walk to a highway and they would be confused. Am I looking at a street? Am I looking at a road? Then they could look at an interstate and say the same thing. Autistic people often are so literal and process things in very concrete ways that categorization in our minds can be very challenging. So when you ask me a question, for example, in an interview, if we were to role play, I say, Matt, tell me about this feature. I might spend a minute or two debating, what do you mean by feature? Because that could be different than what I mean by feature. And that can create a unique situation in interviews. So say, for example, before I was diagnosed, I had some weird interviews where essentially you get asked questions that you can't answer it in a standard way. And because of how you're answering, so like a simplistic example, my mind does not retain dates at all. You could say any date to me and I basically can't remember it. I was very funny. An interview asked when I graduated college, didn't have my resume in front of me. I just blinked and I could not respond to that. And very understandably, the interview's like, oh, that's a flag. Like, you can't even remember this stuff. So there are big differences when you interview an autistic person versus a neurotypical person. What I would say to that is, a company can really dig in, start by defining a business case. Because what you don't want to do is you don't want to jump in and solve these problems. You need to know first, why do you want autistic or neurodiverse talent? If you create a business case, I recommend there's a workbook out there. It's called the Autism at Work Playbook. Where I work was actually one of the main authors on it. It's a great handbook, but it goes into detail about how do you find out how to build a business case to get autistic people? What areas of work, for example, do you need innovation in? Or what areas of work are maintenance like, where it's repetitious work that other people might find boring, for example? What do you expect to gain from recruiting autistic people? Because if you can't answer that, you might not stick with the program.